Today we're talking about one of the Bible's wildest stories. A guy who gets swallowed by a giant fish because he tried to ghost God. And stick around because we're going to talk about how this ancient tale of divine Uber gone wrong would look today. Jonah is just a regular guy, living his life, minding his business. One day God says, "Hey Jonah, go to Nineveh," which was basically the ancient world's equivalent of the worst city you can imagine, and tell them to stop being terrible. Jonah doesn't say anything out loud, but spiritually leaves the chat. And Jonah does what any reasonable person would do. He goes literally anywhere else. He boards a boat in the opposite direction. Important detail here, Jonah isn't confused. He's not lost. He knows exactly what he's doing. A huge storm hits the boat. Everyone is panicking. Everyone is praying. Everyone is crying out, except Jonah. Jonah is asleep, which feels very relatable, honestly. Eventually, Jonah admits, "Yeah, this is probably on me." So the people throw him overboard. Not ideal, but effective. And then, surprise, a giant fish swallows Jonah. Now Jonah spends 3 days inside this fish. 3 days in a fish stomach. That's basically the worst Airbnb review ever. And while he's in there marinating in fish guts, he finally has time to think about his life choices and prays, "Okay, God, I messed up." Jonah prays, and he changes his mind. The fish vomits him onto a beach, which honestly is how most of us feel on Monday mornings. And God says, "Try again." This time, Jonah goes. He gives the warning, and shockingly, the city listens. The people change. God shows mercy, and Jonah is kind of mad about it. The end. Yes, really. Now, while none of us are at risk of being swallowed and living 3 days inside a whale, this story still applies to our lives today. Because it isn't really about the whale at all. It's about running and fear. And we're all Jonah sometimes. The Jonah moment in modern life is anytime you know what you should do, but you run in the opposite direction because it's uncomfortable, scary, or just inconvenient. We all have a Nineveh. God calls each of us to something. Maybe it's a specific mission, maybe it's forgiveness, maybe it's surrender. And sometimes, like Jonah, we know exactly what God wants us to do, and we run the other way. Your Nineveh might be that difficult conversation you need to have with a friend or family member. The career change you know you need to make but terrifies you. Apologizing to someone you hurt. Starting that project you keep procrastinating on. Ending a relationship that isn't working. And our modern boats in the opposite direction. Oh, we've got tons of those. Doom scrolling social media instead of dealing with problems. Binge watching shows to avoid uncomfortable thoughts. Working 80 hours a week to avoid personal issues. Staying busy so you don't have to face what matters. And here's the kicker. The storm always comes. Maybe not a literal storm, but the consequences of avoidance will show up. Your anxiety gets worse. The problem gets bigger. The relationship deteriorates more. Your health declines. And just like Jonah, we often need our own whale moment. The whale today might look like burnout, or anxiety, or a season that forces you to stop. But here's the beautiful part of the Jonah story that people forget. The whale wasn't punishment, it was rescue. God could have let Jonah drown, but instead the fish saved him and gave him 3 days to think, pray, and realign. Your whale moment might feel like the worst thing ever when you're in it, but sometimes that crisis is actually when transformation happens. If this video encouraged you, consider subscribing for more content, exploring how ancient biblical truths speak to our modern lives. And leave a comment. What's your Nineveh? What is God calling you to that you've been running from?